Hey everyone, it's Coding with Kareem. In our last video, we looked at how we can use channels to kind of synchronize Go routines in Go. However, I don't think I did a great job with explaining the basics of channels. So for this video, I want to look at using an unbuffered channel, the basics of using an unbuffered channel, and some things you have to watch out for. And in our next video, we're going to look at using a buffered channel. So let's get right into it. I'm going to declare a channel variable in this main function. So I'll just call it C, and to generate a channel in Go, you use the make function, and I'll use the channel keyword, and then I'll pass in the type of the value that I want in and out of the channel. So we're going to use a integer. Cool. So now that we have a channel, we can do two things with a channel, right? We can send a value to a channel, or we can retrieve a value from a channel. So let's kind of just go through that process, and let's start with sending a value into the channel, right? So I can just write channel, which is the channel variable. I can use an arrow, and then let's just use the value 10. So what does this represent? Well, if you guys kind of like read it, it's supposed to be intuitive. We have an arrow pointing to the channel, and that arrow is coming from the value 10. So this represents sending the value 10 into the channel, right? Pretty intuitive. Now let's actually read from the channel. So we can do that kind of with the same similar arrow syntax, but just pointing in a different direction. So if I want to get the value 10 from the channel, I can declare a number variable. I'm going to use that same arrow syntax, and I'll have channel be on the other end of it. So this kind of represents us getting a value from the channel, right? We have this arrow pointing from this channel and pointing towards the number variable. So this number variable should have the value 10. So now that we have this, let's actually just print the number variable to the terminal. And now let's run our code. And I get a deadlock. That's unfortunate, but we're going to try again. Second time, nope. Third time is the charm, and this is broken. So this isn't working. We keep getting a deadlock. Why are we getting a deadlock? Why is this not working? Well, when we use specifically an unbuffered channel, sending and receiving to a channel is blocking. That will block your program. It will block the Go routine responsible for doing that operation. Why is that so important in this code example? Well, we only have one thread or one Go routine in action in this main function. So it will essentially block on line 8 indefinitely. We're gonna send the value to a channel, and our program will wait until we have a receiver reading from this channel, but that doesn't happen until line 10. So we're gonna get stuck on line 8 forever. So how do we kind of fix that? Well, if you're using an unbuffered channel, you really want to be reading from the channel before you ever get a chance to write to the channel. Because if you don't, assuming you're only using one Go routine, or assuming how your code is formatted, you can very well run into a deadlock. So you really want to be reading from the channel before you write to the channel. So we're just going to change some things up. I'm going to have an anonymous Go func here, and we're going to essentially use this exact same code from line 14 to 16, right? Boom. So that's all we changed, right? So in this code, we have declaring a channel on line 6. We have an anonymous go func, which is going to essentially block on line 9. We're waiting for something to actually be sent to the channel. Once we get a value from the channel, we're going to print it out to the terminal. And then on line 14, we actually send the value 10 into the channel, right? So this should work. Let's actually run this in the terminal. And we got nothing, but this is just unlucky. Oh, we got 10. And then we got nothing. So if you guys notice, we're getting very, very inconsistent results. The reason why we're getting very inconsistent results is because looking at this code, we have on line 9, this go routine will block until line 14 executes, right? Naturally, because sending and receiving is going to be blocking. However, once our main go routine, the one that originates from our main function, hits line 14 and sends the value of 10 into the channel, this will activate line 9, and the number variable will store the value of 10. However, our main go routine is simply going to exit our program before line 11 ever gets a chance to hit. And we can actually prove that by just forcing our program to sleep. So if I force my program to sleep for a second, and then I try running my code, we see that now we get the value of 10, right? So this is a nuance with using a unbuffered channel. While when you use an unbuffered channel, you really want to make sure that you're reading from the channel before you ever get a chance to write to the channel. There is some inconsistencies depending on what your program is doing. So in this example, we are simply exiting out of our program before line 14 ever gets a chance to execute, and we actually get the value of it. So this is different than using a buffered channel. If I were to use a buffered channel very quickly, we wouldn't see that issue. So let's actually revert our code to like the previous example, the one without the anonymous go func, right? So this is kind of the example that we saw with the deadlock. If I were to run this code, we'll see that we get a deadlock, right? That's the deadlock that we saw before. If I actually change just one simple thing, and when declaring this channel, if I pass in a size, let's say I'll just pass in 1, so I make this channel buffered. If I were to run this code, we see that we get the value of 10 every single time. Why does that happen? Why is it that when we use an unbuffered channel, we keep getting a deadlock, but for a buffered channel, code like this is working fine? You know, it should theoretically be blocking on line 8, but it's not, even though we only have one go routine. Why is that happening? Well, you'll find out in the next video. I hope you guys learned something. I hope you guys have a great day, and goodbye.